Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. This is the France 24 debate. We're asking what next after the fall of Timbuktu. Joining us from Bamako, Ambassador Aboudou TOURE. He is ECOWAS's special representative to Mali. With us here in the studio, Jean-Charles BRISARD of the risk consultancy JCB Consulting. I'm also with us William Jordan, who is a retired U.S. diplomat, and Michael KIRTLEY, documentary filmmaker and journalist who's often reported from the area. We were saying before the break, we were talking about the deployment of African forces alongside of the French. Let me just ask you, Ambassador Toure, the numbers of African forces has now expanded to to nearly 6,000, I believe.
Yes, I mean that the number of African troops increased about 1,072. That represents 67% of the initial 2,000, which was planned. So now we deploy them first in Gao to secure the bridge and the strategic places. They are also in Markala by the Burkinabe troops. They are in the locality of San by Togolese. And I mean that Nigerian, they are in Bamba, and they will be reinforced by Beninese.
And would you agree that the tough part of the assignment is still to come in that mountainous region in the northeast that we were talking about here?
Pardon?
I was saying, do you agree that the tough part of the job still lies ahead with that region that has lots of mountains in the northeast of the country?
Yeah. I'm not hearing what the questions.
All right, we seem to have a problem there with the liaison with Bamako. Yeah. We'll try to sort it out as quick as we can. By the way, we were describing there all the help that's on the way. Over the weekend, Washington promising aerial refueling missions. It was a little bit of a long time in coming. At first, they were going to charge for that, and then that now it's free.
Well, I'm glad. I mean, it's what we should be providing allies engaged in a military operation.
Why was there hesitancy?
I don't have any official word on that. I can only surmise that this was going through various channels, and with Washington fully in a transition from the Obama 1 to Obama 2 administrations, as well as severe winter storms in the D.C. area. It just might have been hard to get all of the paperwork and everything else done. I mean, I put it down to a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of initial reactions based on budget realities. There's no good or acceptable answer in my view.
Jean-Charles BRISARD, what conclusions do you draw from?
Well, what strikes me here is not the delays themselves to, for example, mount this African operation. We knew that it would take weeks, or if not months, and that's the case today. What strikes me is the limited and late support, political support to that intervention from European countries primarily, because they're acting as if this war was our war, meaning if the threat was especially uniquely on France, which is not the case over the past years. Germans, Italians, Spanish, Swedish have been kidnapped as French and killed. Britons have been killed. Americans have been killed in Algeria by Al-Qaeda and Islamic Maghreb. Canadians also were taken hostage. So what strikes me is again the limited support to this war, which is essentially a counter-terrorism effort from the part of France.
So what should they be doing concretely? We know the British are providing logistics, but what those other countries that you mentioned?
Participate more actively. For example, the United States have a lot of intelligence capabilities in the region, drones that we don't have, and other things, but apart from simply refueling our planes.
I don't know the details. I imagine a lot of these resources are shifting. I mean, we've obviously done what we needed to do, snapping to provide the logistical support, and the newspapers are full of reports that intelligence support is now much more forthcoming, and that there are American intelligence drones flying over the area to enhance whatever intelligence support we can provide. Beyond that, I really don't know. I mean, we have a problem in terms of some of the assistance we can provide to Mali because of legal restrictions, given problems over the constitutionality of the current government in Mali. I believe that we're doing everything that we can in Washington to support France in this. But I can certainly understand why people in Paris would believe that more is needed.
Michael Kirtley?
You know, as far as the perception that this is a French engagement, it's obviously the French started very quickly. You know, it was sort of perhaps a little surprise to the outside world. But I think going back to what you were saying earlier, there might be a question as to what really is the tough part here, because you talked about the tough part of resolving this problem. Is it really a military question that's the tough part, or is it a political question that's the tough part? Because if you look at it one way, you've got the terrorists out in the desert now. You can probably carry on a strategy of containment and destruction over time there if you want to. But really, the real question is putting Mali back together like Humpty Dumpty. You know, you've got a state that's fallen apart, that because it was falling apart and because it was corrupt even before the the uprising in the north. The real question is, you've got a triumvirate of problems. The triumvirate of problems relates to corruption that's perceived very widely inside Mali, poverty and extreme difficulty due to the drought and due to the warfare in the north. And also the third problem is the legitimate questions that arise from how the people of the north are going to be treated as an outcome of this entire situation. And so the real question to me is not just a question of whether we go attack the Islamists in the north. The real question is, who is responsible for putting this country back together?
Who is responsible for putting it back together? Ambassador Toure, do you get the sense that ECOWAS and the forces that are there are going to be in Mali for a long, long time?
Yes, let's say that we come to help Malians to free the territories in the northern. I can say that we will be there as necessary it is, but our expectation is that in 6 months, if it is possible for us to free the territories there, I can say that yes, for the first phase to liberate the territories and to help the government to organize elections. And now, I mean that there is another phase for development which will take a long time. And in the status of ECOWAS, you know, prevention of crisis is the first place. The management of a crisis also, and how to help to build, to reconstruct the country is another phase, which is very important. So that for the management of the crisis and the conflicts, if it can be very short, that is our expectation. And we are sure that maybe that will take, let's say, between 3 and 6 months. And after then, we can mobilize all the resources for the development. And for the development, I mean that it is, we can say it is 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, but we will help them as long as it is possible for them to achieve development goals.
Michael Kirtley, does that timetable seem realistic?
Well, let's look at it this way. We're going into the hottest season right now in that part of the world. We're going to the rainy season, which makes things very difficult at different, you know, to logistically. And this is probably very much one of the reasons that the United Nations special envoy Romano Prodi was saying you couldn't do anything before September. I mean, you have to understand that there is a climatic question that's coming up in the very near future that the French troops and the African troops are going to be facing. So to me, it sounds unrealistic, especially since rooting these jihadists out from the mountains and from the other areas they are in is going to be rather problematic. It seems unrealistic to think that that could all happen in the next 6 months.
You were saying a minute ago how it's always delicate for Paris, in this case deploying to a former colony, or is it? Leaders of the African Union Summit, which is taking place in the Ethiopian capital, have a bone to pick, not with the French, but with their own membership.
I applaud France, who had to wait an extremely long reaction time for African leaders to act. The international community has taken the initiative to do what we should have done ourselves, facing international terrorism that threatens Mali, in our region, our continent.
And we heard basically the same complaint from the executive chair of the African Union.
There is also a resurgence of a tendency of rebel groups attempting to oust democratically elected governments. The Union must remain firm on its stance of no unconstitutional change of government. And the Union must enhance our capacity to defend democratically elected governments and their territorial integrity. Thus, there is a need to accelerate the operationalization of the African Standby Force.
All right, she's saying that the African Standby Force has to be boosted. Of course, when it comes to Mali, it's a little bit complicated because back in March, when the jihadists and the Tuaregs were taking the north, there was a coup going on in Bamako. And even though the soldiers have returned to barracks, we're still in this iffy transitional phase.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, but I guess one of the things that I have to put into place here, just to make it clear, you know, from having looked at this for the last 10 years, what happened last year in Mali was in many ways an accumulation of problems and deficiencies in the way it was administering the North and failing to get to grips on its own or with other neighboring countries with the growing influence of Islamists and jihadists there, which all was blown up terribly by the situation in Libya. And what I think Washington, Paris, and now Addis Ababa are fully coming to grips with is that we are witnessing through the situation in Mali and the need for France to intervene, the culmination of everything bad that could have possibly come out of the implosion of the Gaddafi regime, the proliferation of weapons, and the return of masses of Tuareg rebels ready to fight for their independence in the north. It has all come together, and this poses a major test, I think, for the African Union, as much as for the immediate regional community around Mali, to figure out how to deal with this, because this is a test of everything that the speakers in Addis Ababa have raised on the African Union about the future of security in Africa.
The future of security in Africa. Jean-Charles Brizard, do you agree that as a result of what's happened, everybody is going to pay a lot more attention to what happens in northern Mali in terms of, you know, decades of an unresolved problem with nomadic groups like the Tuaregs?
Oh, that's true. And well, France, again, was responding to a security issue, a pressing security issue, the aggression of northern Mali by jihadists, war crimes also that were committed in major cities of northern Mali that we don't speak a lot about. And obviously in the mind of the French government, the next issue is the political issue. And obviously France will be pushing for an agreement between the government, the Malian government, and the Tuaregs, because this is essential to resolve not only the security issue, I mean to stabilize the country, but also to resolve the humanitarian question and the development question, which are more and more important.
Ambassador Toure, how is that problem in the north of the country going to be solved?
The problem in North, You know, in the north, as you know, the crisis is based on the rebellions. And these rebellions comes time to time because they are not well managed until now. Now, we would like to take this opportunity to see if it is possible to change the manner how Mali is managing the rebellions, because there is the problem of development. It is not only a political issue. And I mean that when you have development problems, which is merged with narco traffic, with terrorism, so it is so complex. So let's say that what we are saying is that how, for the first time, to help the government to try to liberate the cities and get an election be organized. Now to face for a long time the fight against terrorism, that will be the task of a legitimate government which will be established. So let's say that now we say that we try to free Gao, Timbuktu, and maybe tomorrow Kidal. That is not the end of terrorism.
That's not the end of terrorism.
That is not the end of narco-terrorism.
All right, and it's where we'll leave. It's where
so I mean that.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there, Ambassador Toure, because we're out of time. But I want to thank you for joining us from Bamako. I also want to thank William Jordan for being with us, Michael Kirtley, Jean-Charles BRISARD. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.